Trump makes most ridiculous claim about Russia and Ukraine yet, and Zelensky's reaction say it all. You have no idea what just happened. What's going on next? Stay tuned. Yes, President Donald Trump said that Russia allegedly wants to see Ukraine succeed, according to a White House broadcast. After concluding the meeting with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the leaders of Ukraine and the United States addressed the press. Responding to a question, US President Donald Trump said that Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin was being generous in expressing a desire for Ukrainians' success, including through the sale of energy at low prices.
They're going to be helping. Russia's going to be helping. Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. Once, it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin was very generous in his feeling toward Ukraine succeeding, including supplying energy, electricity, and other things at very low prices.
Let's now take a look at the reaction of the president of Ukraine.
Once, it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin was very generous in his feeling toward succeeding, including supplying energy, electricity, and other things at very low prices. So a lot of good things came out of that call today, but they were in the works for 2 weeks with.
It's absolutely shocking and almost unbelievable that Trump could say something like this. To hear him claim that Russia wants Ukraine to succeed while Russia is actively bombing Ukrainian cities and killing innocent people is beyond absurd. It's deeply offensive and surreal. It completely ignores the reality on the ground. People are dying, homes are destroyed, families are being torn apart. The emotion this statement evokes is a mix of anger, disbelief, and incredulity. It's hard to even comprehend how anyone could describe a brutal aggressor as generous while they're actively committing violence. It comes across as detached, naive, or shockingly out of touch with the suffering of Ukrainians. Saying that Russia wants Ukraine to succeed in the middle of a war is almost like denying reality. It's surreal, almost like a cruel joke, but with real human lives at stake. About Trump-Zelenskyy meeting, on December 28th, the President of Ukraine and the United States, Volodymyr Zelensky, and Donald Trump held talks in Florida, with the US leader hosting negotiations on the peace plan at his mar-a-lago residence. After the talks, both leaders addressed the press and made a series of statements. In particular, Trump said the following about Russia. Russia is seeking to seize additional territory, making it necessary to move quickly toward an agreement. The US working group on Ukraine will include Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and General Dan Kane to negotiate with Russia. It will become clear within several weeks whether the peace plan works. The issue of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was discussed at length. Trump said Russian dictator Vladimir Putin wants the plant brought back into operation and described it as a major concession that Russia is not bombing the facility. Putin opposed a ceasefire to hold a referendum, arguing that ceasefires are easily violated. A trilateral meeting involving Trump, Zelensky, and Putin could take place at an appropriate time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy may hold a phone call with Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin for the first time in more than 5 years, according to Fox News. According to the source, the prospect of a call could be facilitated by the meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy at Mar-a-Lago on Sunday.
Sunday's talks between President Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy could pave the way for the first call between Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin in more than 5 years.
While the Florida meeting was presented as progress in Trump-led peace efforts, the source said that securing a direct Zelensky-Putin call would amount to a diplomatic victory for the US president. Had Putin joined a call on Sunday, it would have been the most significant achievement in preparing peace talks and the first tangible step in the peace process, the source added.
Trump seems to be the most successful mediator because the two of them, Putin and Zelensky, perceive each other emotionally, and it is a challenge.
According to the source, the talks centered on US-backed 20-point peace plan developed over several weeks of negotiations. The document would require compromises from both Kyiv and Moscow to bring Zelensky to the table and potentially enable direct talks with the Russian side. possibly including Putin himself. Why Putin stopped speaking with Zelensky? The source told Fox News that Putin has refused to speak with Zelensky since July 2020, when they last communicated over the Wagner-related scandal and the failed operation to detain Russian militants linked to the group. Since then, Zelensky has repeatedly sought contact, but Putin declined. Relations between the two leaders were described as tense even before communication ceased. The source said earlier conversations were never cordial. Putin was typically terse, while Zelensky tried to establish rapport. According to the account, Zelensky often sought engagement when Putin remained largely silent. Before that point in 2020, calls between Zelensky and Putin were never friendly, and there was always tension between them. During talks, Putin was always taciturn, and Zelensky tried to establish a rapport. The source added that there were opportunities for talks in August and September 2024, but they faded after Ukrainian forces entered Russia's Kursk region. Kremlin statements indicate that Russian objectives in the war against Ukraine go far beyond the seizure of individual territories, including the Donetsk region, according to the Institute for the Study of War. In its report, ISW notes that Moscow is insisting not only on territorial concessions, but also on the fulfillment of broader demands directed at Ukraine, NATO, and the West as a whole. In particular, Russia is seeking changes to Europe's security architecture and limits on NATO's influence, demands that extend well beyond the Ukrainian issue itself.
Recent Kremlin statements are at odds with several of the positions that Trump presented as the basis for ending the war. The Kremlin has repeatedly rejected European-led security guarantees for Ukraine. Kremlin officials have also called for any future peace agreement to address Russia's demands that NATO cease expansion and roll back its borders.
Analysts stress that any peace deal that fails to take these broader Kremlin demands into account will not satisfy Russia. As a result, such an arrangement is unlikely to lead to a lasting peace or to the normalization of relations between Russia and Europe or the United States. Russia is preparing for war with NATO. Following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, European countries have grown increasingly concerned about the possibility of further aggression from Moscow. States have stepped up preparations for potential threats, modernizing their armed forces and developing new defense scenarios. French Armed Forces Chief of the General Staff, General Thierry Burkhardt, said that given the pace of Russia's rearmament, it could become a real threat to Europe within 5 years. Meanwhile, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has not ruled out the possibility that Russia could attack a NATO country as early as 2029, after restoring the military capabilities lost in the war against Ukraine. Ukraine is planning to hold a meeting at the level of advisors with the United States and Europe, which could take place as early as January, says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky while answering journalists' questions.
We have been developing an action plan, our strategy step by step. What we want to finalize and agree on with our partners. First of all, we want to hold a meeting at the advisors level in the coming days.
As the head of state noted, National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umerov is already coordinating with partners, and Kyiv is doing everything possible to ensure that the talks are held in Ukraine for the first time. After that, Zelensky said all the necessary documents will be prepared at the advisors level, followed by meetings of European leaders within the framework of the coalition of the willing.
This meeting will take place. I began discussing it immediately after I met with Trump. I have already spoken with Macron and several of our other partners, and I will continue these consultations. The meeting will happen.
The president claimed that once the documents are agreed at the leaders' level, preparations will begin for a meeting between Trump and European leaders, and we are all seriously committed to ensuring that all these meetings I have mentioned take place in January, Zelensky emphasized. He also stressed that if developments are positive, a meeting with representatives of Russia could be possible in one of the appropriate formats. We once again emphasized that we are ready for the relevant formats we discussed yesterday, the president concluded. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Support Ukraine, like and subscribe.